Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Silver Tempest, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, I'm going to be giving you my post-rotation buy list. This should set you up pretty nicely for the rest of the year with the cards that we currently have in the standard format, which of course will not be rotating by the time we get to the Scarlet and Violet block. There are going to be some speculative picks in here as well, so hopefully this is going to give you a good basis of what to start looking at and sort of separating from your binder right now while you are making those post-rotation changes. Let's start off with the supporters then, and I think Professor's Research is by far and away the best supporter in the game that we have post-rotation. It's looking to be a 4 of in almost every deck, just because the other supporters that we have on the screen, a lot of them are going to be supplementary. They come in here and there, they are going to be handy, but the core basis will be those researches at the very top. Judge as well as Roxanne are our two means of hand disruption, so Judge is going to be sort of taking the mantle on from Marnie. It's obviously a much weaker card to use on your own end than Marnie. It's a -1 for yourself, so it is going to be used a lot more sparingly, I would have thought, but I am still choosing to say that 4's the right way to go because there could easily be some Arceus V-Star style decks or Mew style decks that normally have a good backup engine of their own end, and they're just going to try and spam the hand disruption to make it as difficult as possible for opponents. I actually really like Avery post-rotation. I think there are going to be definitely some setup stage 2 decks like Ampharos and Gardevoir EX that you can definitely punish quite well with Avery, and I think it does have good synergy with some sniping attackers like Urshifu and Radiant Greninja as well, so that seems very strong. Chorus's Experiment is not just going to be this Lost Zone card. We already saw it start creeping into the likes of Arcdura, Arcgudra, that sort of thing. And I think that could easily still be the case. Chorus could be squeaking into more and more decks because it just lets you see 5 cards, and that's still a decent amount throughout the game. You are going to Lost Zone pieces here or there, but it is a good dig into the deck. We have Cynthia's Ambition and Bruno, which are both sort of allowing you to do more once you've suffered KOs. Not the best, but they can chip in here and there. Worker could be a nice space cheater by having Stadium discard whilst also drawing cards throughout the game. Can still be helpful against things like Path to the Peak, which are still in the format, of course. I think Shauna and Copycat are kind of the most dubious on this list. I definitely understand if you don't want to get any of these. Shauna is just a shuffle 5 at any time, and Copycat, if we are going to have lots of certainly Gardevoir decks that are trading all the time and having a lot of these draw 3 style effects in their decks, the likes of the new Miriam supporter as well as Avery and Worker possibly making it all into the deck, Copycat could be getting a lot of value. So I am just putting a couple on the list. There has been formats where Copycat's been like a really good supporter, but that's a long time ago now. But I do foresee it having possibly some value above some of these other supporter cards. We've got Zinnias, which is really good against setup decks actually, but is slow on the offset, so just a couple there. And then Melanie, you know, we are moving into an EX era, but there are still some very strong V Pokemon that can take advantage of this supporter card for energy acceleration. Again, even though it is type specific, it can possibly go into like Arceus decks, Palkia decks. We saw how it even ended up in like Vikavolt in this format, so it may end up being that sort of secondary energy package that you have alongside like Trekking Shoes, Celebrations Mew, Greninja. That turbo engine is still a possibility in this format, so I still think Melanie is a good 4 of pickup. Let's have a look at some utility supporters then, ones that don't necessarily draw cards but still have some big uses in the game. Clara seems really good post-rotation, especially for these evolution-style decks where you can get back your basics, your stage 1s, to instantly put them back into play and maintain your stage 2 line, whilst also, of course, getting turn attachments, which is really awesome. Raihan's still looking very good for like Lost Box, just cherry-picking certain pieces. I don't think Lost Box completely dies, even though Scoop Up Net goes, so I do think it'll still be a deck in the format. Raihan's a big deal here, and of course can also be an accelerator for all sorts of other things. Peonia, not just for like these controlling decks, but also could easily be helpful for stage 2 decks that are going to have multiple offshoots of their stage 2 line. I'm looking at Gardevoir again, where it's likely going to have a split of Gardevoir EX and the single prize Gardy, and sometimes even Gallade as well. So Peonia could be really important there, and even just picking out pieces of your evolution line like excess Curlies and whatnot is going to be helpful. Professor Burnett, it's been that supporter that I've memed on for so long in Lugia. It may actually be, finally, correct to play Burnett in your deck to have easy access of discarding your Archeops. So that's definitely something to look into. Peony, I say 4 of. I don't think there's necessarily any decks out the gate that are going to be able to use a Peony engine, but it is a very powerful effect in being able to tutor 2 trainer cards, so it's a good thing to sort of have as a fallback in case this engine starts becoming popular. Boss's Orders and Serena, I think it's still worthwhile getting 4 copies of each of these. It's definitely on that higher side, but Serena, again, ends up being a fairly good draw supporter in the game, just because it offers discard synergy, which we lose a lot of next set because we lose Quick Ball. Post-rotation, I should say, not next set. So having discard synergy in your deck is actually vital. I think Lugia could easily be back up to 4 Serenas post-rotation, just because you need more discard synergy cards within your deck. So yeah, that's why I'm going so high on those cards, even though we're going to be in a format with not just V Pokemon, also EXs, stuff like that. For some healing stuff, Cheryl seems reasonable. There are going to be some evolutions knocking about. Sharon's Care still seems good for Arceus-style decks, and possibly even Lugia could go back to a sort of tanky strategy now that we lose like the sort of tempo 1-prize stuff. It could be going down a different direction. And Cook, surprisingly, has been a card that I've also considered, definitely in my Guardy decks. You could see it going into like a Mewtwo v Union Guardy list, where you pop some energy on via your Guardy EX, then completely heal your Mewtwo so it can start swinging for the 300 damage or the 16 counters. Either way, could be a pretty decent card in that regard. Or even if you're not playing the Mewtwo v Union, if you just want your Pokemon to tank, like again, it could be on Shadow Rider, it could be on the Gardevoir itself, these sorts of things all seem reasonable. And then we have a couple of single strike supporters on the bottom right here. We have Karen's Conviction and Single Strike Mustard. They're still in format. They could easily go alongside Duraludon. And I do think the stadiums get kind of worse in format, which means Tower of Darkness might get better. Because if you're playing Quad Tower and some single strike supporters, you probably win that stadium war and end up getting value from these sorts of cards throughout the game. And then in the top right, we have some Disruption style supporters. We keep the Silene Yelchir Palpad loop because Palpad is being reprinted in Scarlet and Violet. So that's really important. And we also have some energy and tool disruption style supporters as well. I think special energy in general gets a lot weaker. Obviously, Mew is still going to be playing fully special energy, but I think Lugia drops the tier list a little bit. So I think in general, the sort of special energy disruptors are a little bit worse, but they could still end up having a home in control decks. Let's have a look at items then. On the top left is a ton of our Ball Search remaining. Like I said, we do lose Quick Ball, which is currently a vital piece in the game, but Nest Ball is a pseudo replacement that we're getting, and you can actually buy these today because they are a reprint from the Sun and Moon block. I'm saying lots of 4-ofs here, even things like Great Ball and Capturing Aroma. These are cards that didn't really get a look in with just how powerful we had things like Incense and Quick Ball. Now they're going. I think Great Ball and Aroma could get a look in. Certainly in my Lugia, I'm looking at these sorts of cards to give me extra access to my Pokemon. Feather Ball as well, a bit of a weaker one, but can get free retreaters. So again, may end up going into Mew as like that 1 or 2 count, because Nest Ball is actually way, way worse for Mew than Quick Ball, because Quick Ball was always an insta-play, which Nest Ball isn't. And it's never like minusing from hand, which Quick Ball always did. So Feather Ball being an easy -1 from hand, and allowing you to get VMAX and the V is actually fairly valuable. It may end up being a 1-of alongside like 3 Nest Balls or something. So I think Nest Balls are actually secretly very cloggy for Mew. And then Fog Crystal, I know it's type specific, but it's very good in Lost Box, very good in Guardy, could end up in Shadow Rider, could end up in all sorts of different decks, so I still think this is versatile enough. Even just having searchable energy via an early item card can be very helpful. Even things like Klefki, Diancie are coming into decks, so there are some really nice basics that you could take advantage of here. For Rare Candy, imagine that, actually wanting Rare Candy in format. It's looking very promising that some of the EXs are the best cards in the sets from Scarlet and Violet, so yeah, I actually think Rare Candy is going to be used, which is pretty crazy. We have some great recovery stuff, Recycler, Retrieval, Rescue Carrier, also very good for the Stage 2 decks in particular. Palpad, like I said, not just for the Silene Loop decks, it can also be a great card. just in other archetypes, allowing you to recover, like Boss's Orders, Miriam, the new supporter card, Clara, those sorts of things. Even tech supporters like Avery, if they're coming in as a one-of, Roxanne, these sorts of cards. I think Power Pad can end up seeing some play in some of these deck lists as well. Energy Search and Energy Switch, I don't have anything particular in mind for these cards, but they are just great ones to have in the binder. Crushing Hammer and Fan of Waves, again, I don't really particularly think they're going to be all that strong going into Scarlet Violet, because obviously Guardy has stupid acceleration, and so does Ampharos. And to an extent, like Arceus does as soon as it gets into the game. So I don't know just how powerful these are going to be from the get-go. I'm really crossing my fingers that they're not all that good initially. But, you know, there are always going to be times in the format where you can try and capitalize on certain decks that really rely on hand attachments. And that's where these cards really come into play. For sort of speedy item cards, we have Trekking Shoes, which I think are really good next set because we have such a lower quality of supporter cards. I think filling out those slots with Trekking Shoes just to see more cards throughout the game is going to be really important and provides more discard synergy. Like I said, we're lacking now with Quick Ball going. Pokegear to help you just hit Research, because it's just a far better supporter than any other one you'll have in your deck. Seems fairly reasonable, and Cramomatic still going to be very good for Mew. But again, when supporters suck, filling your deck with items makes a lot of sense, and then Cramomatic gets more value. So the fact that I might be going heavy on like VIP Pass, Level Ball, Nest Ball, and Ultra Ball, like all in decks, could mean our deck composition is going to have like roughly 11 supporters, but then like a ton of item cards. Cramomatic may end up sneaking into the list just to allow you, again, on a head split, basically find one of your 4 researches to get digging into the deck or something similar. For switching effects, we are losing Scoop Up Net, which is massive for Lost Box, so it may have to start weaving in the likes of Switch back into the deck alongside Carts and Rope. At the same time, we lose Air Balloon, so most decks in general are probably going to be wanting to play Ropes and Switches themselves. Cross Switch is still obviously very good for Mew and all sorts of other decks. Again, could be a way that Lost Box goes back to having Cross Switches to add to the overall switching count with that loss of Scoop Up Net, and then they can probably take away the Bosses or Serenas that were currently in the deck list, so that's also another option there. A Lost Vacuum, obviously disrupting tools, not going to be as helpful because you're not getting random value on air balloons that sort of stuck on the board here and there, but still can be great for that Stadium bounce. And I do think the Celebrations Mew engine is going to be good for some decks. I'm definitely trying out on a few things, so giving yourself extra outs to Stadium bounce path in particular is really important. And we also have the Arven supporter, which can get items and tools. So the fact that you could have Arven being a searchable means of bouncing Stadium is pretty important for Vacuum as well. And at the same time, again, I'll talk about Lost Box because we are losing Net, which, as I keep saying, is massive. So having Vacuums just be those filler spots that can fuel your Lost Zone in an alternate way could be important for getting your early breakpoints of 4 and 7 to get really online in the game. Echoing Horn, obviously very good for just bringing back 2 prize Pokemon to capitalize on, and cancelling Clone. There are less annoying like Pokemon. I want to say Miltank is going to be far less of an issue because there's going to be EXs and Vs and 1 prizes roaming around aplenty, so it shouldn't really be a huge issue. We're far less worried about things here and there. Like Duraludon gets a lot weaker in the format just because Special Energy is a lot worse in general, but I still think this is a great card to hang on to, even if it is just going to be disrupting the likes of Manaphy for spread decks, so that's something to bear in mind. Onto the tools, again, we're losing a lot of tools. Choice Belt gets worse on its own again because we're splitting the spoils between Vs, EXs, and 1 prizes, but still possibly having a couple for damage mods, as I am still expecting a lot of V-Stars and V-Maxes to still be at the forefront going into the set. EXP Share looks pretty good for some of these Elixir-based decks. The new Electric Generator, Lightning-style stuff could definitely do with a card like this. Tool Jammer, just disrupting these sorts of things, makes a little bit of sense, trying to keep your stuff tanky, although I do think there are so few good tools in the format, Tool Jammer gets worse, but as more are printed, this card will once again like become more powerful. And Leafy Camo Poncho, it's not really one that we've seen much in the format right now, but it could end up being decent in these Radiant Eternatus style decks, where you can try and protect your VMAXs on the bench, especially if they're going to be sat there trying to get value with various abilities or whatnot. Could also be useful in like Shadow Rider Guardies and some stuff like that, where they can just be a store of energy that can't be targeted by the opponent. which could be reasonable here and there as well. And then we have the best tool cards, the Forest Steel Stone and the Sky Seal Stone, which are both tongue twisters. Obviously, Forest, very good for Mew, can also, again, be good with the new Arven supporter, could end up going into some Miraidon, Regieleki style decks, as can the Sky Steel Stone for some uptrades. There's going to be a few decks that are going to be playing the Drapion package with this, like Lost Bots could easily be doing it, and so could the Miraidon Aleki thing, so I do think both of these definitely have a place, and I actually really like Arven going into this set. I know a lot of people are kind of mid on it, thinking it's like obviously worse than Irida was when that first came onto the scene, but that's not to say that like these Seal Stones aren't completely busted, and Item Tutor is actually really good in a format with Stage 2 Pokemon, because it can get you rare candies, but also now that we have this stupid Elixir, which is absolute power spike, Arven's actually a crazy card for that deck. Onto stadiums, again, a lot of good ones are being stripped away. Path to the Peak is still going to be around, and it targets rule boxes, so it does encompass Guardy EX, which I think is absolutely massive. So I can easily foresee they're going to be at least some Arceus decks playing Heavy Path, where you're trying to shut off Greninja in the early game, going to shut off Mew, and shut off Guardy EX throughout the game, which sounds just very, very strong. I also think this could still go in Mew. I think it's a lot less likely, but it really, again, depends on Drapion. Lost City, again, also very, very strong. If you're going to be targeting 2-prize Pokemon, don't give them... Sorry, Stage 2 Pokemon, I should say. Don't give them that recycle of their lower forms and really hurt their bench in that regard. Not allow them to re-establish their board could be very, very strong. So I think Lost City, again, could be a very powerful option. Collapse Stadium for some pseudo-healing, and again, bench management is going to be nice. There's a lot of setup decks coming into Scarlet Violet, so I think punishing them with Collapsed and Avery is going to be really strong. Pokestop is just a good dig card, and again, I keep saying supporters suck, so going heavy item route with Pokestop isn't a bad idea at all. Jubilife can just be this cycle card, but it does get diminishing returns. Could end up just being that stadium bounce in the mid-game, though. Stormy Mountains, I know it's particularly for lightning stuff and dragon stuff, so that's why it's kind of that versatile option that I'm putting just on here as a staple. As soon as you get one Miraidon EX out, you can get the rest of the gang out if you're playing lightning style decks most of the time, and if you're going to be playing like Arc Gudra or Arc Dura, now that we have to play the Dragon Duraludon, Stormy Mountains could get a look in. Temple of Sinnoh, I keep saying that Special Energy are much worse, but this can still be an option for some decks to continue to disrupt if you really feel like it's necessary. There are a lot of basic energy decks, though, going into this format, so something to bear in mind. Shopping Center, again, our tools are a lot worse, but having things like Defiant Band that you can pick up and put down for the right moment actually sounds pretty interesting. So not a terrible stadium, all things considered. Primordial Altar can give you some extra free information and discard synergy, which again, we're really lacking in the game. So just having a card that can help you cycle actually isn't all that bad. And then Magma Basin, I don't think there's any real good fire decks at the moment, but this card just has bags full of potential, so it's definitely one I'd get for the binder. For Special Energy, we really have a massive cull here. Double Turbo is still really important, and look at the sad state of affairs it looks like for Lugia. V-Guard's still going to be helpful because there are going to be Arc decks and there are going to be Mew decks around, so 3 of those still make sense. And we're going straight to the PTCG Live ladder where we're playing Lucky Energies in our Lugia this day and age. So I have got 3 on here, as well as 3 Gift Energies. These can all go in Lugia. I also think Gift Energy can be reasonable for some like 1-prize stuff, maybe the Dondozo Tatsugiri deck, where you're going to have double turbos, but then you also need some basic energy to like Raihan onto, and then you can use Gift Energy to help top up your hand size, stuff like this. So I think just a versatile, strong special energy to have in the binder for future. And yeah, it's a sad state of affairs where Lugia's been to where it is now with the special energy that we have available to it. On to some support and tech Pokemon then. I think sort of in the very easy way to describe this, the bigger they are, the more important they are. So we have the Big Barrel 2-2 line. I think it's important to get both a 60 and 70 hit point Bidoofs. They're going to be good in different sort of times in the format. There's going to be, at the moment, I've put 4-4 Arceus V-Star. Again, we lose Incense, and we only have 4 Ultra Balls now, so we may actually be going to 4-4 lines of our V-Stars just so that we hit them turn 2. it's a sad state of affairs, but I think a lot of the time people will do that instead of playing a 4-3 line and like capturing Aroma, whereas there's the 50-50 of it just being a useless card for you. The Gardevoir engine. Now, I keep talking about Gardevoir EX as this fantastic deck, but I also think that Curlier is going to be replacing Cincino, of course, because it's another level ball searchable means of having trade. But also you can evolve into the top end of Gallade, which can tutor supporters for you, or Guardy, which is a +2 in the hand throughout the game and can provide basic energy acceleration. So I think this is just a very versatile draw engine. Could easily be going into like Zoro Stage 1 decks, could be going into even the fighting decks. I'm looking at having Guardy as the backup acceleration because you can't really rely on Gutsy Pickaxe and Koraidon the whole game, so I think this could be useful. Obviously, it's integral to the Guardy deck itself, but I do think we're going to see more and more of the sort of trade Curlier just in decks, because again, we are yearning for discard synergy. We absolutely require it in the game, so yeah, this is going to be a really important engine, I think, going forward. Radiant Greninja, still crazy strong. The Celebrations Mew engine, still looking very good as well. Mysterious Tail hitting these item cards throughout the game can help you get rare candies, can help you get VIP passes, obviously very good for setup decks. Radiant Charizard, still going to be a great beat stick in decks that can choose to add that fire energy in. We have Drapion, still going to be an important card. It actually can power itself up to be able to deal with Guardy EX as well. Like if we're looking at Ampharos decks, you can actually just flaffy a bunch to the Drapion and get it rolling to actually attack. So this is going to be a good tech card, definitely for Ampharos. It's going to also go into decks that just struggle with Mew in general, of course. Luminion V is an interesting one. Losing Quick Ball does actually diminish the returns you get on Luminion now, because it's actually way less outs that it actually helps you get into a supporter card than it used to. And of course, it's only really been seeing play in Lugia, and that's because it can accelerate special energy and then yeets back into the deck. Now it's a lot more difficult for that to happen. I would still say pick up 2 as a soft choice, just because it can still add, you know, 4 or 5 outs to your deck if you're hitting Ultra Ball. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but I do think, again, it's nowhere near as powerful as it was when we had 8 ball search cards that could access this for Luminous Sign, I should say. Manaphy looking really important. I do still think there will be spread and snipe in the format. And protecting your evolving little chaps is going to be really important. And of course, Lost Box is still going to need to require this because they'll have lots of little guys sat around the board, so that's really big. Diancie looking pretty good. We actually have a few Pokemon that have a sort of hit and switch style attack in the format. We're going to have Hisuian Zoroark, which does it for 0 attachments. We also have Regieleki V, which does it for a single lightning, and we even have the Ralts that does it for a single psychic. It does 10 hit and run. So having a Diancie in your deck makes a lot of sense for a number of lists, actually. Pumpkaboo, similar to Luminion, because it's a coming into play effect, it gets a bit of diminishing returns, but it can still give you a decent amount of outs to Path, which I think Arceus decks probably will still continue to play because they want to play Paths themselves. Altaria actually might be getting a look into the format. It is a really good card. It's a natural free retreat pivot, which is actually way more important next set because we can't just air balloon anything that we want to. So having a natural free retreater that can also put supporters on top of your deck is actually very strong. And as I keep saying, research is the only good supporter in the game now for draw. So just making sure you're not whiffing those throughout the game is going to be really important. Zoroark also looks really good. It can transform into EX Pokemon, which is pretty crazy. So it gets more versatile. It could end up being its own Stage 1 attacking deck, of course, alongside like the Curlier engine to give you trades and whatnot. But I'm actually putting this as a core essential style card because yeah, it can be in all sorts of EX decks that have this random amalgamation of 1 and 2 prize Pokemon. So it's getting more and more versatile as we go. Leafeon V and V-Star is a pretty interesting one. Obviously, having Greening Cells for acceleration early game isn't too bad, and then giving yourself a V-Star power to have Gust isn't the worst thing. Grass itself as an archetype could end up being this sort of Leafeon Spidops style deck if we really want to go down that rabbit hole. So that's up to you if you want to go thicker on the Leafeon line. We have Kricketune V that does have exciting stage. There is a Beach Court from the new set that can give this free retreat, which is pretty important. So you can move in and out with the exciting stage to draw more cards throughout the game. Galarian Articuno gives us vital discard synergy. Zamazenta could be a decent attacker, especially in Lost Box, but also has a discard hand effect. Galarian Zapdos V, getting a lot of diminishing returns because we're, again, mix and matching Vs and whatnot, but it is a fighting type, and that is threatening into Arceus-style decks, and possibly if you can actually physically power it up, it could be helpful against Ampharos. Dunsparce for some protection, still going to be important for Lugia and Arceus, possibly. Ditto, if we are going to play some sort of control-y, stall-y stuff in the middle here. These are all cards that I would consider with like control or lock-style decks. So I think Ditto is going to be like a focal point if we are going to play this sort of one prize mesh of Mons. Ice Cube is a lot worse because we lose Wash Water, but it can still be frustrating for some decks that still don't have a way around it. Obviously, Lost Box will now have an easy answer to Ice Cube. Yveltal, again, looks a lot worse because Special Energy is worse, but I still think maybe pick up a couple because it can still be used against the Mew players. Pyukumuku, still a decent card, as just allowing your Ball Search to go that little bit further. Obviously, we are losing Quick Ball, so again, the diminishing returns come in where you can't just consistently cycle the Puke quite as easily. And Pidgeot V can be an anti-deck out measure still, so a good one for the binder, no doubt. Let's have a quick talk about the Scarlet and Violet cards that are coming in as we start talking about archetypes now. I've mentioned Guardy a lot, really important Psychic style archetype, which is going to flood energies into play for ideally one-hit KOs with either Celebrationization or even the Gardevoir itself. The one prizer, because they both can do a ton. You will be yeeting a ton of energy onto them and damaging them quite heavily, but it doesn't really matter if they're just getting up trades a lot of the time. Klefki looks really good, not just for the Guardy deck, but for a ton of decks. Denying basic abilities is absolutely crazy. It really hurts, obviously, Genesect engines. It hurts Comfey engines. Miraidon has a new fantastic ability. It stops Luminion. It's stopping Celebration's Mew and Radiant Greninja. It really does prevent a lot. And as I mentioned with the Diancie, there's a handful of decks that have an easy hit and run into this card, and there's also going to be a ton of decks that can just pay retreat into this card. So having Levelable and VIP Pass available means this Klefki can be online pretty sharpish and be really annoying for decks. So I wouldn't sleep on this card at all. I think it's absolutely nuts. Miraidon looks good, not just for a way to get your Flaffies into play if you're playing Ampharos, but could also be its own deck alongside Regieleki because of that electricity generator. Amphi is just within a Blessed Evolution line, so it doesn't look all that impressive, but it can easily deal with basic 2 prizes quite happily, and it has 330 hit points, which is pretty massive. The fighting deck, Koraidon does provide some energy acceleration, which is okay. Rock Chestplate offers some tanking, and Great Tusk actually has some decent damage output at its disposal. I'm still kind of sus of fighting. I don't think it's the best, but I do think fighting is good type coverage because it is going to be important at dealing with Arceus and Miraidon and Ampharos, so it does still cover a lot in the format. So even though they don't look that good like within a vacuum, they may be good in the context of the format just because it hits so much for weakness, so all of these numbers are being doubled basically. Defiant Band, just a decent card when you're behind for damage mod. Miriam, I've mentioned a couple times, can go alongside Clara or instead of Clara for some Pokemon recovery, which is great. Arven, I've mentioned, can be great at grabbing electricity generators, as well as some like EXP shares or your Seal Stones, which could be massive. Penny could be really important actually for the fighting deck, because you can move in and out of Hisuian Arcanines and shift your energies around as you like. The Beach Court going to be really big for possibly Ampharos decks if you want to have 1 retreat cost Mareeps. It can give you pivots. Also going to be massive for Lost Box, of course. Again, we're always trying to recover from that lack of scoop up net, so this could be an alternate route. And then there are a couple other interesting sort of engine mons. Reverum can be an alternative to Bibarel, and Squovit can go alongside Reverum or Bibarel and can also be used alongside Altaria, so a little cheeky card that can be an engine mon. This isn't by any means all of the Scarlet Violet stuff, there's a lot that I've missed here. This is just a quick and dirty rundown of what I think like the most impactful cards are from that set so far. Let's have a look at what I think are going to be probably the strongest decks in the new format. So I've already mentioned Guardy. These are the cards that are currently in format that you can buy to try and help out your Guardy deck. Obviously, I already had the entire Gardevoir line, apart from this exact Curlier, on a previous slide. So it's just a few bits here and there. I think Nazation is a great attacker, as is the Articuno as a sniping option. And Radiant Serena could easily go alongside the build if you go heavy on the Klefkis. If you go for like a turbo approach, you can play Celebrations Mew and Radiant Greninja instead. Those are the kind of the 2 directions I'm playing with right now. It's actually really nice to heal your stuff with Serena because it allows you to just slam more energies onto things, which is kind of hilarious to really push your damage output. So in a strange way, this is helpful not only against like Lost Box at keeping your stuff healthy, but also it means you can actually reach like 330 damage on some stuff, which is just pretty stupid. So yeah, I think Guardy going to be very, very strong. I think Lost Box continues to be strong, even though it does lose quite a bit. So I am still saying get all your Lost Box pieces, the Confays, the payoff with the Mirage Gate, the Zamazenta from the latest set, and I think there could be a few branches of Lost Box as we always see. So Gudra can still be pretty tanky, which I think is very reasonable. Gudra could also be going alongside Arceus quite easily. Giratina, similar story. It could go alongside Arceus, but also could be the return of Giratina in many ways, where you have this mixture of 1 prize and 2 prize quite nicely. We are getting rid of Washwater, we get rid of Parasol, so actually seeing Giratina's V-Star power work is pretty nice into some 300 hit point EXs. Could be pretty crazy. And the Kyogre build, in theory, is still alive and well also, so that's also an option for you. We have a lot of good lightning stuff. I think the Ampharos deck is looking very good. We have the Regieleki Elixir-style deck, which is looking kind of interesting as well. Low to the ground beat stick approach, which is looking good. Definitely good if we are in a multi-prize format. It gets worse if there are very good 1 prizes looming around. That's where it's going to struggle, really. But Regieleki V actually has a really good attack into 1 prizes. It does 100, and then minuses 100 from it from the following turn. And you can buff that 100 damage with V maxes like on your bench. So you can actually be beat sticking through like Flaffies, Mareeps, Curliers, you know, Crams and that sort of thing quite happily, and having a minus 100 is actually pretty huge for you. You're a very tanky 2-prizer at that stage. You're basically a baby Gudra, which is hilarious to see. So I think that deck has a lot of potential. Hisuian Zoroark actually has a lot of potential. It's got great beat stick options to it, and it basically loses nothing apart from yeah, just the same things as everyone else, like Marnie and like some of the Bull Search, but that's not really a big deal. So Zoroark, basically unscathed, has that very high damage output potential that you need to hit EXs, V-Stars, V-Maxes, and it's kind of just doing its thing. Even the fact that you can Void Return into Klefki now gives this deck a lot more protection against things like Mew, where you're just shutting down their engine on turn 1, and then you can be the one proactively getting the first hit in and winning a race. So I think this card is, or this deck in general, is looking very, very promising. I'm thinking it goes probably alongside Melanie Water Energy, but we'll see, because it needs to have more than just a 4DT at its disposal. Then again, it could go back to playing just like Silene or something like that if it really wants to. What else do we have? We have Mew, which is, again, looking very good. Like, we have to be very afraid of Klefki, we have to be very afraid of Drapion, and we're still afraid of Path. So there's still a lot to be afraid of, but in a vacuum, this deck kind of loses the least, so should be drawing the best, and we know that drawing the best is normally a very good secret to success. So Mew is still going to be a deck, still going to be that pace setter that can still do so much, and it can be the disruptor in format as well, don't forget. You can be Marnieing and Averying, sorry, not Marnieing, you can be judging and using Avery against like the stage 2 decks. You can be Psychic Leaping in against like Lost Box and whatnot. You can still be doing a lot of tricks up your sleeve, so this will definitely be a deck. Contentiously, I think Lugia is likely going to, if it is going to survive, go down a single strike route. The main reason I think this is that dark coverage is very good for Mew and Guardy. Fighting coverage is very good for Eleki and Ampharos. And this gives you wall breaking if you were to happen upon like Duraludon or something like that. So it's similar to having that like amazing destruction Yveltal at your disposal. So yeah, I think you're going to be a multi-prize deck these days, much more likely. Maybe with a couple of splashes of 1 prizes like this Yveltal for an uptrade into the dark weak stuff. Or obviously you can attack with that Archeops. But I think yeah, the deck itself is just way more clunky and awkward. Giving Lugia Pokemon Gust is pretty interesting though, so I'm kind of interested in this deck. I have got it built. I am going to be testing it this weekend a little bit, so I think this is likely the new direction for Lugia. I don't think we have anywhere near as good 1-prize stuff to attack with when we have only colorless energy that we can really accelerate, so the single strike package is what I'm looking at as my sort of replacement. You'll notice as well I have the promo Urshifu V on here as well as the regular Urshifu V. The promo just has a 1 for 30, 1 fighting for 30 attack, which could be relevant if we see a lot of the Flaffy deck, because it can just be booting into Mareeps, thanks to single strike energy pushing you up to 50 damage. You can be booting Mareeps and Flaffies for just 1 attachment as well, so looking pretty interesting there. If you want to have a split of your Urshis, definitely think about that. Then, again, also looking pretty contentious, Urshifu VMAX. I think it is going to be very important to have some sniping in the format. It's going to be really detrimental for Stage 2 decks. It's still going to be a big issue. We obviously lose the Inteleon engine, which was normally how we saw Urshifu operate. But I still think Octillery is a good engine. I still think the power of Gale Thrust is going to be really huge if there are a lot of Lightning decks and Arceus decks, which I am expecting, and even Hisui and Zoroark. Obviously, Zoro and Arc can be playing Dunce, but make them play it and give yourself sniping options against them. Those are all things you can do. And yeah, like I said, the engine's still not too bad. Possibly Irida could be coming in if you're going to play like Radiant Greninja, Octillery, and Empoleon all in your deck. It could be a bit of a engine going on where you still have a lot of tutor to grab certain things, so I think it could be pretty interesting. The reason why I have Moltres on here is that the double Drapion thing that Urshi does right now doesn't really cut it, because you need to have coverage not just for Mew but also for Gardevoir EX as well, so I think it's likely that maybe a Moltres package again goes back into Urshifu, if anything. Again, speculative, but that's how I foresee Urshi continuing to be a threat in the format, which I do think it is, because fighting type coverage is still very, very strong. And then we end up on speculative Pokemon for sure. It's strange to think that Palkia's dropped this far down, and it's possible that I'm being negative on it, but that lightning weakness is really scaring me. The biggest upside of Palkia, I think, is that you can just use Greninja turn 2 and ruin some engines if they haven't developed a Manaphy. But I am expecting a lot of VIP pass even in the Stage 2 decks. Because Guardy has Curlier that can just throw away VIP passes when they're dead throughout the game, and they get such a power spike by just having more Curliers on the board, so it's not hard for them to find that early Manaphy, especially with quad level ball in their decks as well. So I don't think it's that big of an issue for them. It just sort of ruins their bench management that little bit. So I think you're too fair really as Palkia these days, which is a sad thing to say. Magnezone V-Star can also do some sniping, which again is very dangerous. And again, it's very easy to get this going. You just need to attach twice to the Magnezone to be able to do it. And it does 2 90 damage snipes, which is really good for dealing with Flaffies and Curliers. So again, it's keeping stuff honest. But also Magnet Grip, allowing you to grab item cards from your deck, is again really huge. I'm so sus of how decks draw in the game. So having Tutor like this in an attack that can continue to get your Ball Search, or can continue to get your Electric Generators, for example, is going to be really huge. And I think Lightning still has some of the best support just by having Miraidon now and Stormy Mountains. I think that's really important stuff. I do have Shadow Rider and Mewtwo on here as like what's likely to be worse Gardevoir EX based builds, but they can be things for sure. The main reason I'm sus of Mewtwo is that you want to commit most of your trades to discarding Psychic Energy rather than the Mewtwo itself a lot of the time, and also I'm worried that there will be an element of Dark in the format just because people want to deal with Guardy EX already. So that makes me nervous that there's not just going to be Drapion in the game. There's going to be actual Dark attackers, which makes Calyrex and Mewtwo like far more scared in the format. They're far bigger downside for having these cards in the game. We have the Radiant Eternatus stuff. I haven't really had enough chance to play around with this just yet to know how high tier it is, but it obviously gets worse when you lose Quick Ball and you lose Scoop Up Net, so the Eternatus itself just gets way less consistent than it is right now, which I think is a problem. If you want to just play Arcdura, you have to play the new Single Strike Duraludon V, which I probably should have put on this slide, but I didn't really have a good place to put Arceus stuff, because Arceus can go with literally anything. But yeah, just a quick note there, if you want to play Duraludon VMAX now, you have to get the new Single Strike Dura Vs. I've got Houndoom on here as well as a speculation. If the Lugia thing doesn't work out, just by having Dark and Fighting type coverage and going back to Houndoom could be reasonable. Now, we all know that the deck is slightly less consistent than we'd like, but we've just had a huge rotation, and this deck loses basically nothing. So it could just be one of the better survivors. So every other deck is about as consistent as Single Strike, which is a sad sentence to say, but it means that you can actually get into the game with these Houndooms and do your thing, which could be pretty interesting. Kind of the issue is that you're damaging your stuff, so that's the main reason why I still want to try out the Lugia build instead. Rotom V-Star again, if you want to commit to adding some bad tools to your shopping list, you could definitely think about that. The Rotom V-Star can have some power spike potential at its disposal, and can tech in things like Flying Pikachu still for the likes of Lost Box. Although you do lose Parasol, which does make it a lot less versatile. We have some fighting stuff, like I said. This is likely going to go alongside the Koraidon and the new Rocky chestplate, but I think Hisuian Arcanine is probably the face of that deck, just because you can be more versatile with your energy throughout the game, which I think is cool. Scale up your damage as you need to, try and be tanky with chestplate and Lake Acuity. Try and augment your damage, possibly even with Grants and Galarian Zapdos for burst acceleration or damage output, which could be pretty interesting. We have Regidrago V-Star. I think it's still most likely that Drago is going to be best with Arceus, and I think it definitely has some legs, because again, Goodra is a very, very solid attack, as is Giratina's attack. Still hitting just that raw 280 is still a good number in the game. So I think there's a chance for Drago Arceus again to have some legs. And if you still believe in the Gardenia's Vigor approach, you can get that stuff as well. I'm also pretty interested in a... Oh, I've got the little Drago V down here as well. It's just pasted its way on. But yeah, we have the Zoroark Stage 1 attacking package. I'm actually really interested in Lucario. There's a new Lucario coming out in Scarlet and Violet that has a revenge attack for 1 fighting that does 30 and 120 more if you suffered a KO last turn. So you can do that 150 damage for 1 fighting. And what that lets you do is it lets you Roaring Resolve like a ton to your bench. So the whole time you're actually growing a big Lucario for big damage. And again, that fighting type coverage looks very appealing to me. So having Mightyena for Mew, having Lucario for the Ampharos decks looks very appealing, and even having Flapple to help out against like the Gardevoir deck, which is just full of abilities the whole time. I think there's actually a lot of potential around a Zoroark style toolbox, and don't forget that we always have that Twilight Inspiration available as well. There's some options for that Leafeon Spidops that I was talking about, and if you do believe in that sort of deck, you can try and add these grass things to your basket. And finally, I keep talking about dark type coverage being really important in the next set because of Mew and Guardi EX. So I do think some of these sort of less powerful V-Stars could get a look in. Samurott does also gain the Hawlucha from the set for extra bench damage to just tag things throughout the game, so you can be doing maximum damage with your Merciless Blades. Moltres is still a great late game beat stick, and Darkrai could just be the sort of tempo deck again that just fills the deck with a ton of item cards, knowing that you can use your V-Star power to get back like double Cross Switcher or get back double Dark Patch or whatever else to continue churning through the deck. So yeah, that is going to be the buy list. Let me know what you thought about my speculative archetypes as well as the ones that I actually have a lot of hope for. Let me hear your thoughts down below. Were there any decks that I missed out, or any cards that you think belong on the list as well? This took a lot of time to put together, so I hope you appreciate the video. And yeah, I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.